You hear me now? Yeah. Oh, so it is okay. It is okay. All right. So last week we had a specific instance of game theoretic insight that appears in the Talmud, and this week we'll talk about another insight of modern economic theory. It's called moral hazard, that appears in the Talmud. So we're going to start with the story of the 10 stores. A town has 9 stores selling kosher meat and 1 selling non-kosher meat. If a stranger buys from one but forgets which one, is right there on your source page, it's source number 1, then the doubt as to which store he bought it from renders the meat forbidden. But if he found it, the Rambam says that this means he found it in the market. Yeah, it's thrown away, discarded in the market. Okay? Go by the majority. In other words, it's kosher, eat it. And I'm not so sure that some of our Federmann would eat the meat if he found it in the market, but that's the halacha. Yeah, that is the halacha. Okay, it's kosher. Now, people have been wondering about this halacha for millennia. Okay, I mean, ever since it was promulgated, I guess, about 2,000 years ago. What is the difference between a guy who forgets that he bought the meat, where he bought the meat, and if he found it in the street? Okay? What's the difference? Why this is one? And there's been a lot of ink spilt over this, but as far as I know, nothing convincing has been forthcoming on nothing, and I may be wrong about this because I'm a very small Talmud Chacham. Yes, I mean essentially I'm not a Talmud Chacham. That's what I'm trying to say, and I may have missed it, and somebody may have given some kind of reasonable explanation of this difference, but not that I'm aware of. Okay. And here again, we turn to modern economic theory in order to understand this better. And the concept that we're going to use is the concept of moral hazard. Okay? Now, what is moral hazard? And here I've spelt it out. Choices by interested parties are not governed by the laws of probability. And those are big words, okay? And I'm going to try to spell it out, what exactly that means. And now I'd like you to look at your, but this is the last slide, okay? Except for the thank you slide at the end, this is the last slide. I wanted to keep these are the 2 major themes of this talk, this shiur. So, yeah, take out your source page and take a look at what it says, all right? Moral hazard, source number 2. Choices by interested parties are not governed by the laws of probability. And the prime example, there are other examples, but the prime example of moral hazard is the insurance business. Okay? So let's say I have a car. In fact, I do have a car. And I insure it, let's say I insure it against theft. All right? And I go to the insurance man, he says, the agent, he says, I say to him, I'd like to insure my car. He says, Mr. Aumann will be delighted. That'll cost 2,000 shekels per year. So I write out a check for 2,000 shekel, and then I say to him, you know what, that sounds like a good deal. I want another one. Another policy. I'll pay you 2,000 shekel, just like you asked on the first one, and you give me another policy, okay? And you'll pay me again, yeah? You'll pay me twice. If my car gets stolen, then you'll pay on my first policy, whatever my car was worth, and you'll pay again on the second policy, whatever my car is worth. He says, Mr. Aumann, we don't do that. So I said to him, why not? You know, if I go to the greengrocer and I say I want a dozen oranges, and he gives me a dozen oranges, he says that costs 50 shekel. I give him the 50 shekel, and I say, I want another dozen, okay? And he says, certainly, Mr. Aumann, we'll be glad to give you another dozen. And I plunk down 50 shekel, and he gives me another dozen. But why doesn't the insurance man want to do that? Okay? Why not? I mean, he's in it to make business. On every policy that he writes, he presumably makes a profit, right? Some kind of profit. He makes a living, yeah. So why doesn't he want to do that? So the insurance man says, Mr. Aumann, I really don't know, but the company does not allow us to do that. Okay. So I'll tell you why the company doesn't allow him to do that. Because there's moral hazard involved. See, if I buy one policy, and I don't want my car to get stolen. Why don't I want it to get stolen? I don't want it to get stolen because it's a lot of hassle to apply for the insurance, and also you never get it all back. You know, let me tell you a story about insurance. This lady over here is my second wife. Yes, when my first wife died, the car was registered on her name, okay, and then it got stolen. It really got stolen. It was during that wave of Arabs stealing cars, yeah. It's not, this has sort of died down, but 18 years ago, that's what it was. And I went to the insurance company. I said, okay, my car got stolen. I want the insurance. They said, but it's not insured in your name. It's insured. I said, that's right. It's insured in my wife's name, okay? But, you know, she's dead. So give me the money. So they said, we'll put it in her grave. We'll write a check. Okay. Eventually I got the money after about 6 months, and then I started asking them for the interest on the delay, and I got some of that also, but not all of it, and you know, it was a big hassle. So getting paid, by paying the insurance company is no problem ever. But getting paid by the insurance company, that is a problem, okay? So you don't want your car to get stolen, and besides, they don't always pay the whole amount, and it's a hassle. So you're careful not to get the car stolen, right? But if you have two policies, okay, then it's worth it, yes? You know, let me tell you the story about it's worth it. This yeshiva student, it used to be in Europe that the yeshiva students were, they ate at the Balabatim in the town where the yeshiva was. On Friday nights, or maybe sometimes even every day, the yeshiva didn't have enough to pay for the meals of the yeshiva students. So, and this Balabayas was a big Baal Tzedakah. He had a lot of people on his, at the Friday night table. So he bought 2 challahs for lechem mishnah, and then he had bread on the table, bread. So this yeshiva student is sitting there, and he takes in the chicken soup, he dunks in one piece of challah after another. And and the eyes of the balabais get bigger and bigger, and finally he can't hold himself in anymore, and he says, you know, young man, there's some bread on the table also. You could use the bread. He says, I know, but the challah is better. Yeah. So the balabai says it also costs more. So the student says it's worth it. So when you sell two policies on the same car, then it becomes worth it to get your car stolen. So none of us would think of doing that purposely, okay? But, you know, we might be a little more forgetful about leaving the key in the ignition or whatever it is. Yeah, we just might be. We have this moral hazard. That's what it's called. It's a moral hazard, which is when you make the choice, yes, and you're an interested party. So the man over here, the owner of the car, is an interested party. He's interested in getting his car stolen, okay? So when he makes his choices of whether to forget the key in the car or not to forget the key in the car, he doesn't do this chas v'chalila, he doesn't do it purposely, but there is an element of moral hazard in this, okay? And lifnei Yisrael lo titen mechshol, yes. So I'm going to suggest to you that that's what's going on in these 10 stores is an issue of moral hazard, okay? And now this shir has two purposes, really. One purpose is to explain the 10 stores sugya. And this sugya appears 15 or 16 times in the Babylonian Talmud, in various guises, and I'm going to show you some of them, okay? Not all of them, because we don't have time. I checked out each one of these 15 or 16 sources, and they all jibe with this explanation in terms of moral hazard. All of them. No exceptions. I used to think there were one or two exceptions, but I figured it out, there are no exceptions, okay? And that is one purpose of this talk. But that's not the main purpose, because the main purpose is economic theory in the Talmud. So what I'm going to suggest to you is that the theory, the doctrine of moral hazard, this doctrine which you have on the screen in front of you, that choices by interested parties are not governed by the laws of probability, okay? So the number of times you leave your key in the ignition, since you are an interested party, is not the average number of times that everybody leaves his key in the ignition, okay? That's what it means. And that this was anticipated by Chazal, okay, and that is why they promulgated this rule of the 10 stores. So now I'm going to give you explicitly what's going on in the 10 stores thing. When you find something, I'd like to ask you to look at number 3, okay? Anything separated is presumed to come from the majority. But if it is in place, Rabbi Zera says, its nature is taken to be a toss-up. Okay, now this is pretty obscure also, but I'm going to spell it out. In Hebrew, kol de parish meruba parish, v'amar Rabbi Zera kol kavua kemechza al mechza dami. Okay, now how does this fit in? When something is separated from the whole, like this piece of meat was separated from the from all the stores, from the original store in which it was. You had 10 stores, okay? And then one piece of meat got separated from the 10 stores. It's no longer in the store in which it originated. You found it on the street, okay? In that case, you have no influence over where that meat comes from, okay? You, the buyer, the interested party, the person who wants, Federmann, for example, who wants to eat this piece of meat, he has no control over where the meat came from. He has nothing to say about it. It comes from what is on the ground over there, okay? Now there, it's a question of probability, okay? So you say anything separate is presumed to come from the majority. The probability is more than half that this comes, in this case it's 9/10, that it comes from the kosher store. And then you go by the Rav, yes? The Rav, that the majority, the probability greater than a half, determines what the outcome is to be considered. We'll have a number of examples. Just a second. Then that is pure probability. Then you do go by it. But if you bought from the store, who knows what your motives were, okay? Even if you forgot, even if the motives were subconscious, yeah? You saw a nice juicy piece of steak, maybe this came from the thing. You chose it. You're an interested party. You're the guy that wants to eat the meat, right? If you chose it and you're the guy that's interested party. The moment you have an interested party, you no longer go by the laws of probability, okay? That is, choices by interested parties are not subject to the laws of probability, okay? It's not, it's 9 kosher, 1 non-kosher, so but you chose it. You made the choice. If you made the choice, then the laws of probability do not apply. That's moral hazard. You can't tell. We're not saying chas v'chalila that you bought in a treif store. What we're saying is we don't know. It's this way or it's that way. Half and half. Yeah, k'mechza al mechza dami. Its nature, whether it's treif or kosher, is taken to be a toss-up, and that is the way I explain this sugya, and a lot of other sugyas, some of which we will now take up. Okay? There was a question here. Yes? Yeah, this is nowadays when we have a certificate from the Rabbanot, or if you don't like the Rabbanot, and from the Eidah Charedas, it is prominently displayed in the store, and you buy from there. But we're talking about what it was in the back then in the times of the Talmud, when there was no certificate, yes, and it was just known that you could ask the people in the town which store, and presumably he did that, or he asked the guy himself, is this a kosher store or isn't it? Yeah, but it wasn't that obvious of what it is now. It wasn't basar kasher written on the. He didn't look for that, yes, and it wasn't that clear. I mean, we have to assume that, because otherwise the sugya doesn't make any sense, right? So yes, sir. Yeah. There's a moral hazard is why he bought this meat. We don't know why he bought the meat. He doesn't know himself maybe why he bought the meat. Maybe it was cheaper, maybe it was this, maybe it was that, we don't know. He made the choice. And it doesn't matter whether he made it before or after. He made the choice. If the interested party makes the choice, half and half. Toss up. Yes, sir. Huh? Of what? What's the term you're using?
Rashi says the reason that's a difference between finding and going into the store is because by going into the store we have a zealous apostle of the aura,
Olive Reish. Okay, well, yeah, I think we'll get to that in a moment. Let me get to that. I think this is in our, this is one of our sources. Yeah, source number 6. We'll get to it in a moment, okay? Okay. But let me first get to source number 4. This is the rape. And it's very clear over here what's going on. Very clear. I mean, it makes it really clear the interested party making the choice. Yeah, it becomes very, very clear over here. So the Mishnah says, in the case of a girl who was raped when she went to fetch water from the spring, Rabbi John ben Nuri says, if most of the townspeople marry Kohanim, then this one also may. Okay, so having sex with somebody who is not from one of the kinds of people, Jewish people, who they don't fit into a certain category. For example, they could be mamzerim, or they could be shtukim, or there's various kinds of categories that once you have sex with that kind of category, you can't marry a Kohen anymore. Okay, and we know that okay. So this was so if most of the people most of the townspeople do not go into that category, then even if this girl was raped by somebody in the town, we don't know who, yes, then this girl also may marry Kohanim. All right? That's the rule. Okay, now the Gemara, there's a long discussion in the Gemara, but the bottom line is, if he approached her, then he separated. So, okay, let me read the whole thing. So we go by the majority. And since most of the townspeople marry Kohanim, then this one also may. But if she approached him, then he's in place, sort of you really have to have these handouts. Marvin, Barbara, you don't have handouts. What happened? What's that? Yeah. I mean, there are lots of handouts. Everybody should have one. I mean, this we're learning inwendig. We're learning this Shia inside. Yeah, you said this is like a Gemara in front of you. All right. So the Gemara says if he approached her, so they were down at the spring, okay, and he comes to her and he rapes her, okay. Then he separated from the townspeople. What does it mean he separated? That means he is taken to be a sample, a good sample of the townspeople. So if most of the townspeople marry Kohanim, presumably he does also. We go by the majority, okay? Call the Polish, we go with Polish. Go by the majority. But let's say that she went down to the spring, and there was this guy there, and she started making eyes at him, okay? And you know, she sidled up to him and she said, you know, haven't we met before, or something like that? Yes. and it ends up in a rape, okay? Now, if she went to him, then she is the interested party. What does that mean, interested party? She wants to marry a Kohen afterwards. She is the one involved in the halacha, okay? She is the person who is involved. She picked him. She picked him? No. Moral hazard. No, we don't know. The moment that she makes the decision, remember what moral hazard is? Choices by interested parties are not governed by the laws of probability, okay? She chose him, half and half. We don't know, okay? All right, that's the source number 4. And we get to source number 5, the mouse. Ladies and gentlemen, this was the one case where I thought this Gemara contradicts my thesis. For many years I thought this Gemara, it's an outlier. It doesn't go along with my thesis that this rule is a matter of moral hazard. So here's the story. When there are 9 piles, this is after Bedikas Chometz. It's after the examination of the Chometz. You know, we do it on the 14th of on the eve of the 14th of Nisan. Yeah. I think we could do with some more source pages here. So this is the eve of Bedikas Chometz on the 14th of Nisan, and we just finished the Bedikas Chometz, and we said the Kol Chamir v'Chamir, and then a mouse comes, okay, and there are 9 piles of matzah, and one of Chometz is there. The one of Chometz was there because you were going to burn it on Erev Pesach in the morning. And there happened to be 9 piles. It's a little bit of a shall we say, how does one say this? A little a contrived story. That's what I was looking for. But it comes to illustrate the point, okay? So there are 9 piles of matzah and one of chometz. And a mouse comes and takes from one of the piles, and we don't know whether it is the one of chometz or the one of matzah. That's like the 10 stores. And it's not only like the 10 stores, it's like the case of the guy who bought from one of the 10 stores but doesn't remember which one. So you have to search again. Okay? The mouse took from the pile and went away, and you have to do the whole b'dika over again. Okay? But if a mouse takes from a separated pile, okay, so there were these 10 piles, okay, and one of the piles got separated from the other piles. Not the mouse took, but there was 10 piles. One pile got separated from the other piles, and the mouse came and took from that pile. It didn't even see the other piles. Then it's okay. Okay? You don't have to separate. You don't have to search again. Okay? So I said, wait a minute. The interested party over here is the balabayas, okay? Or more accurately, the balatabayat, okay? That's the interested party. The interested party and she doesn't want to have to search again and do the whole bedika and all the cleaning over again. And what does she have to do with whether the pile was separated or the pile was not separated? So I said to myself, Yisrael, this does not jibe with your thesis. Naturally, I kept lecturing about it anyway, and I said the exception proves the rule. But I wasn't very convinced myself. I was pretty unhappy with this Gemara. And then it suddenly occurred to me, who's the interested party? The mouse is the interested party, yeah? not the balat habayit. He's the one, the mouse is the one that chooses the pile, yeah? He wants to have a good meal, all right? And since he is the interested party, we don't know what tastes better to mice, matzah or chometz. But anyway, the interested party is the mouse, and the mouse made the choice in the first case, so moral hazard. It applies to mice also, okay? By the way, the Gemara says, Hane achber reshianenu. These mice are wicked, yes? But we won't even take that into account, yes? So, I mean, there's the element of moral hazard, yeah? The mice are wicked. But, so that he is the interested party. He is the one who made the choice, half-half. It's a toss-up. We cannot say the laws of probability do not apply. We cannot say that the mouse necessarily, or we cannot presume that the mouse took from the matzah, and therefore we have to do the examination over again. Okay? But if the pile was separated, then the mouse had no choice. Okay? He is the interested party, but he had no choice. He just took from one pile. He saw a pile, he takes from it. That's it. Okay? So then we go by the majority. It fits perfectly. It fits the thesis perfectly. Let's go v'orav lo. Okay, you said v'orav lo? Yes. Source number 6. Omar kol v'orav lo v'kamalov. Okay. I'm not going to translate this whole thing, but you see over there in the Hebrew. So I'm just going to sort of do a précis of what the rule is. One who kills a Jew by throwing a rock at a group consisting of a Canaanite and 9 Jews is not liable for the death penalty, as the Canaanite was in place, so the ethnicity of the intended victim is a toss-up. Okay? Very interesting. This rule, the rule that we stated in number 3, anything separate is presumed to come from the majority. But if it is in place, its nature is taken to be a toss-up, okay? That rule applies both l'chumra, as we saw up to now, and l'kula. So what does l'chumra mean? L'chumra means it applies whether this is to the disadvantage of the interested party or whether it's to the advantage of the interested party. That's l'kula, yes? Whether it is strict or lenient. I don't know how one translates l'chum or l'kula. That's the best I can do. Yeah. Here, the Gemara says something very, very interesting. This rule of when you make when the interested party makes a choice, then the result is a toss-up. It applies l'kula also. It applies l'kula. In other words, what is happening over here? What's happening over here is that the person throwing a rock at a group consisting of 9 Jews and 1 Canaanite, okay? Then if it is, these 10 people are all in place and he throws a rock at them, then you can't say that he wanted to kill any one specific person there. And since there was a Canaanite in there, he may have intended to kill the Canaanite. He may have aimed at the Canaanite specifically. They were a group, but he may have aimed at the Canaanite. All right? This is not very nice stuff, you know, killing a Canaanite. But you're not allowed to kill a Canaanite. That's the rule. But if you kill him, you're not liable to the death penalty. Only killing a Jew, purposely killing a Jew, makes you liable to the death penalty. So if there was a Canaanite in the group, then you made the choice how you threw it. Yeah, you threw at the group, how you threw it, who you aimed at. You can't say then that you go by the majority. But if one person separated from the group, all right, there were 10 people, 9 Jews and 1 Canaanite, all right, and one of the 10 went away and stood someplace else, okay, 10, 15, 20 meters away. And now you throw a rock at this one guy and you kill him, all right? Then, and it turned out he was a Jew, yeah? Then you're liable to the death penalty. Why are you liable to the death penalty? Because he's separated from the group. So presumably, he was a Jew. It's 9, 10, 90% probability that he was Jewish. You threw a rock at him and you killed him, or you threw a rock at him with the intention of killing him and you killed him and he was Jewish, death penalty. I have to say right away that this Gemara is not the halacha, by the way, okay? The halacha is that if you intend to kill one Jew and by mistake you kill another one, then also you're potter. You don't have a death penalty, okay? That's the halacha. But this Gemara, which I'm quoting, doesn't go according to the halacha, okay? And why? Yeah, why? Because something that is separated, you go by the majority. Something which is in place, like these 9 Jews and the Canaanite, you don't go by the majority. Yes, you say it's half and half. So since it's half and half, and safek nefashot lahakel, if it is a question of the death punishment, and you're not sure, it's half-half. When you have the death punishment and it's half-half, then you go to the lenient side. You don't administer the death penalty. Okay. Now we'll go to source number 7. All right? We go to source number 7. The Mishnah says that all offerings that get mixed up with unqualified ones, even one unqualified offering in 10,000 qualified ones, all must die. Okay, so we had a sort of an offering. This was in the temple, in the Beit Avi Chai. There was they had a whole area where they kept animals to be sacrificed, to be offered on the altar, and these were all qualified animals. And then one animal somehow, who's not qualified, who's pasul, you're not allowed to offer him, like a shor and niskal, an animal that is not, you're not permitted to offer him, and somehow he gets mixed up in this group. So now you have 10,001 animals, okay? And one of these 10,001 is unqualified, and 10,000 are qualified, okay? And he says, all must die. All 10,001 must die. That's what the Mishnah says. You know, it's a little contrived, it's a little exaggerated. But the Mishnah is trying to make a point, okay? And that's what there's 9 stores and 1 store. They take these extreme numbers in order to make a point what the halacha is, okay? All must die. All right. That's what the Mishnah says. The Gemara comes a little later. I mean, afterwards, a few dapim. At first they discuss something else in the Mishnah, But then this mission is in Zvachim and 70b, Daf Ayin Amud Bet. And then the Gemara talks about something else for about three dapim, and then on 73a, in the bottom, it comes and says as follows: why not? You have 10,001 animals; they all must die. I mean, it seems a tremendous waste. It's very not green. So the Gemara asks, why not pull one out and sacrifice it? And say, anything separate is presumed to come from the majority. It's a wonderful question, yeah? If you take this, anything separate is presumed to come from the majority. If you take it literally, yeah, that means not this business of moral hazard and so on. But just if it's separate from the group, then it comes from the majority. So pull one out, yeah, and say, okay, he's separate, all right, comes from the majority, you can sacrifice it. And then you pull out another one, just a second, and pull out another one and say, okay, he's separate, comes from the majority, Until you have only not 10,001, but 3 animals left, then you pull one out, he comes from the majority, and that's it. Then you have 2 left, they must die, okay? Your question. So the Gemara is suggesting, according to the literal meaning of the word, called the parish, meruba parish, that anything separate is presumed to come from the majority. According to the literal meaning of this, should be okay. That's what the Gemara is asking. Yes. What's that? How does this apply over here? You take it out. Okay, very good, very good. What we used to say in the old country, getroffen die Gemara's teretz. Yes. That means you found exactly what the Gemara says. All right. Okay. And let me tell you a story about getroffen die Gemara's teretz, okay? Or getroffen die Gemara's kashya, okay? There's this Mishnah in Bami Madlikan, we say it those of us who daven Nusach Ashkenaz, maybe not too many over here, we say Bami Madlikan, yes, and we say Bami Madlikan, Ein Madlikan lo b'shemen kik, v'lo b'shemen sreifa, okay? And one child raises his hand. He says, Rebbe, was it das shemen kik? Yeah? Right? What is shemen kik? What is kik oil? Yeah? What does it mean? So the Rebbe says, getroffen die Gemara's kashya. The Gemara asks, my shemen kik. Okay? And I'll tell another story in that same genre. Okay? The story is, this man, he wants to build a house, okay? So instead of going to an architect, he goes to a Rav. And the Rav looks up in the Gemara, he looks up in the Reuven, there's a lot about architecture over there, and he says, the Gemara says do this and that. So he goes back and he builds the house according to what the Gemara says, and the house collapses 2 weeks later. So he goes back to the Rav and he says, Rav, Rabbi, what did you do to me? Yes, I built the house according to what you told me, and the house collapsed. The Rav says, wait a minute. He pulls out the Gemara and he says, getroffen Tosfos kashya. Okay. So getroffen die Gemara is teretz in this case. So what does the Gemara say? The Gemara says, pull it out, limshoch, yeah, pull it out. But then it was in place. And the nature of something in place is taken to be a toss-up, okay? That's exactly your question, all right? What do you mean pull it out? If you're going to pull it out, then, in other words, you can't take this business of being separate literally. You can't take it literally. You have to examine what's behind it. If you pull it out, still somebody pulled it out. He was the interested party, okay? The interested party was one who wanted to sacrifice this animal. He chose an animal from this pool of 10,001 animals, okay? He chose it. Now, it's true, 10,001 animals, come on. But the principle is a principle, yeah? And he chose it. The moment he chooses it, and he's the interested party, the laws of probability do not apply according to the doctrine of moral hazard that you have up here on the screen. Okay? So this fits exactly, it really bears out exactly this thing that to be separate, it's not just to be separate. It's that it was separated by itself and not by you, not by the interested party. Okay? Okay, that is source number 7. And then now we get to source number 8, which is it's a very moving story. You know, there was this rivalry between Rabban Gamliel, who was the president, the Nasi, and Rabbi Yoshua. And there was this rivalry, and Rabban Gamliel was the president, and he really made Rabbi Yoshua suffer, okay, on a number of occasions. One occasion was when there was an argument about Yom Kippur, when Yom Kippur is. So Rabban Gamliel said to Rabbi Yoshua, you have to come to me with your cane, with your stick, on the day that is with your stick, walk to me and come to me with your stick on the day when Yom Kippur falls according to your calculation. Because my calculation is right, your calculation is wrong, and you have to sort of bow down to my calculation, okay? And then there was another instance in which Rabban Gamliel sort of really humiliated Rabbi Yoshua. And this is the last one, okay? This was the last one. This was the one, it's in, you see over here, it's in Brachot 28a. The sugya starts in 27b. Somebody asked Rabbi Yoshua, do you have to daven Ma'ariv or is it optional? Okay, is it obligatory or is it optional? So Rabbi Yoshua said, it's optional. And then this guy went to Rabban Gamliel. By the way, it was Rabbi Shimon ben Yochai afterwards, it turns out. He went to Rabban Gamliel and he says, yes, and you have to daven Ma'ariv. Is it optional or is it obligatory to daven Ma'ariv? So Rabban Gamliel says it's obligatory. Rabbi Shimon ben Yochai says, but this gentleman over here, and he points to Rabbi Yoshua, said that it's optional. So he said, you said it's optional? Stand up, he says. Stand up. And he made him stand for hours and hours on end, okay, while the discussion continued. Now, the students in the yeshiva, in the study hall, they saw this and they got fed up with Rabban Gamliel. And they said, hey, you are not going to humiliate this Talmud Chacham anymore, and we're going to depose you. We're going to get rid of you. You are not the president anymore. Okay? And there's a whole long story. They went to Rabbi Elazar ben Azariah, and they made him the president, and at that time he was only 18 years old. I won't go into all the details, but they deposed Rabban Gamliel. Afterwards, they reinstated him, okay? But at this point, he was deposed. And now the Gemara says, on that same day, and in other words, on that same day that Rabban Gamliel was deposed, Judah, the Ammonite proselytes. Proselyte in English, it's a ger, okay? He was Judah, he was called Judah, and he comes from Ammon, like Ammon and Moab, one of the nations. And he comes from Ammon, and he was a ger. And came before them in the study hall, all these people, and asked, may I join the community? Ma'ani lavo b'kahal. What does that mean, may I join the community? May I marry a Jewish woman? Okay, that's what it means. You could be a ger, there's no question about that. You can be a proselyte, you can convert to Judaism. But marrying a Jewish woman is more problematic. What's problematic about it? So we'll see right away. Rabban Gamliel said, you may not. And Rabbi Joshua said, you may. So Rabban Gamliel said, but isn't it written, no Ammonite or Moabite may join God's community? Lo yavo Ammoni v'Moavi b'kal Hashem. Yeah. So an Ammonite may not. So he's an Ammonite proselyte. Okay. So it's explicitly written in the Torah that he may not marry a Jewish woman. Okay. So Rabbi Joshua replied, Ammon and Moab no longer dwell in their place. Sancherib, the king of Assyria, mixed up the nations, as is written, I shall wipe out the borders of the nations and remove the inhabitants forcefully. A verse from Isaiah. And a separated object is presumed to come from the majority. So what is Rabbi Joshua saying? Rabbi Joshua is saying that Rabbi Joshua is saying, well, first of all, if actually Ammon still existed, yes, if the nation of Ammon existed, by the way, did you know the capital of Jordan? What's the Amman? That's Ammon. It's the same thing. Okay? It's Abat Ammon. It's the same thing. If the Ammonite people were still in their place, and this guy comes from Ammon and converts to Judaism, then really he's an Ammonite, and Ammonite may not join God's community. Yes, it's written in the Torah specifically. But now Rabbi Joshua says, no, this is the Ammonites were an ancient people. Even at the time of Rabbi Joshua, they had been in the past. They no longer exist as a separate entity. They have joined all the other Gentiles, non-Jews, and most of the non-Jews are not Ammonites and they're not Moabites. Not Ammonites and not Moabites. Most of them are something else. Yeah, the moment you have most of them something else, this fact that he is called an Ammonite proselyte, that he comes from that area, it doesn't mean that he really comes from the Ammonite people. Okay? Now this is very significant because it jibes precisely with the moral hazard thesis. Okay? Because if he had chosen to be an Ammonite, okay, then it would be half and half, all right? And half in this case we go l'chumra, okay? We would say, all right, it's a toss-up, we don't know, all right? And so we can't say that you're not an you're not allowed to marry a Jewish woman. But the moment it's not up to him, he didn't choose to get born, right? It was not his choice. He is the interested party. He is definitely the interested party. But it was not his choice. The moment it's not his choice, then we say, call the Polish Maruba Polish. Everything that separates, and he separated out from the majority of Gentiles, okay? He is an entity in himself. And then you go Meruba Polish, or we go by the majority, okay? So that this decision, this psak din of Yeshua is actually completely jives with the moral hazard hypothesis. But let's go on. So Rabbi Gamliel said, but isn't it written, then I will return the people of Ammon to their land? It's a verse from Jeremiah. So they have presumably returned. Yeah? If Jeremiah prophesied that he will return the people of, that HaKadosh Baruch Hu will return the people of Ammon to their land, then presumably they've returned. He wouldn't tell us a lie, right? Okay. So Yeshua replied, it is also written, I will return my people Israel to their land, and they have not yet returned. Forthwith, he, Judah, was allowed to join the community. So Rabbi Yeshua was saying, well, HaKadosh Baruch Hu prophesied, or one of the prophets prophesied that the people of Ammon would return to their land. Okay, he prophesied, but they haven't yet returned to their land, just like the people of Israel have not yet returned to their land. Forthwith, he, Judah, was allowed to join the community. In other words, Rabbi Yeshua's arguments were convincing. He comes from a separated object comes from the majority. The majority is more than 50% not Ammonite or Moabite, so he was allowed to. But I would like to add that Rabbi Yeshua replied, it is also written, I will return my people Israel to their land. And the Gemara says they have not yet returned, but now they have returned. Any questions? Questions? Yes, sir. Just a moment.
Yeah, my first question regards the example in number 7 of the offerings.
The offerings, yes.
Yes, unlike all the other examples, in this case, the person pulling out the animal, he made a choice, but he couldn't have influenced in any way because he had absolutely no idea of the identity of the animal that he was pulling out. So maybe formally it fits in with your theory, but in this case there was no actual moral hazard because he had absolutely no idea what he was pulling out.
We don't know. We don't know whether he had an idea or no idea. We don't know.
Well,
okay, maybe this animal that the unqualified animal, maybe it has some signs that indicate that it's unqualified. We don't know.
But the whole
we don't know. And if he is doing it, the rule says if he's doing it, the interested party is doing it, is making the choice, then we have to say it's half-half.
But as
soon as we say, you say maybe that would indicate that the animal has no, all cows are alike, yes? Now, it's true. Let me tell you a story. Okay, I'll tell you a story. This Jew and a Chinaman in San Francisco, they were very good friends, okay? Very good friends. They drank together. They got up. They spent a lot of time together. So one day, both of them are standing next to the bar, and the Jew gets up, and he gives the Chinaman a resounding slap in the face. So the Chinaman says, "Itzik, what's that for?" So he says, "That's for Pearl Harbor." So
Chinaman or Japanese?
He says, "What are you talking about? Pearl Harbor, that's like 70 years ago, 80 years ago, yeah? And besides, what did I have to do with Pearl Harbor? I'm a Chinaman, not a Japanese, right?" So the Jew says, "You Orientals are all the same." Okay.
But the whole
So they keep, wait a minute, they keep being good friends. After 3 weeks, they're standing again at the bar. Both of them are pretty drunk. And the Chinaman gives the Jew a resounding slap in the face. So the Jew says, "Wang, what's that for?" He says, "That's for the Titanic." He says, "The Titanic? What are you talking about? That's more than 100 years ago, yeah? And besides, what did I have to do with the Titanic?" He says, "Goldberg, iceberg, you're all the same." Okay, so maybe to Caucasians or Jews for that matter, all the Orientals look the same and all the cows look the same. But to a cow, they don't look the same. They could be different. There are differences between cows, and not only to a Jew. If the Jew is a farmer, you know, he knows how to identify each one of his cows.
But the whole basis of this halakha that they all must die is because they are indistinguishable. Obviously, if you can tell which is the one that is qualified offering, then you just take that one out.
Tell 100%, and you can't tell even 90%, and you can't tell 80%, but 70% you can tell. Okay, so that's like you know, these wine tasting things. When you taste wines, you say you blind taste them. You don't say which wine is which. So you have a feeling that this wine is better than the other wine, but you're not sure. Yeah? So you don't say. So they say, "Oh, it doesn't matter. It's all nonsense. All this wine tasting business." It's not nonsense. These wines do. Let me give you an example. At home, I say to my wife, okay, I say, "Don't buy frozen fish, or if you buy it, eat it yourself. Don't serve it to our guests." Okay. Buy fresh fish. All right. So you know, every once in a while, she usually buys fresh fish, and it's very, very good. Yeah, the fish she makes very, very good. Once in a while, she pulls a fast one on me. Okay, and she buys frozen fish, and then she says, "Johnny, how does this taste?" Yeah. So you know. Sometimes I really can't tell the difference, and besides, it's good to be on the better side of your wife. Yes. And you say, "Hey, this tastes great." It was frozen. You can't tell. You can't tell exactly. You can't tell exactly, but you can't identify. It's not either you can identify or you can't. The question is, you know, does it go one way? It's like the 10 stores. It's exactly like the 10 stores. Next question.
Can I ask another question?
One more? Related to this, or you want to keep arguing about this?
No. Related to the subject, but not about the cows. There's another halacha which is uses this principle, Well, I can't for the life of me think what choice there is, because it's a total natural phenomenon. It says, "Ein holchim bepikuach nefesh achar harov." In case of mortal danger, you don't follow the majority. And the case that's given is that if there are 9 non-Jews and 1 Jew in in one place, and the wall collapses on Shabbat, then in that case you can clear off the wall in order to save the person buried, if you don't know whether it's a Jew or not a Jew. But if they've all dispersed from the courtyard, and then the wall collapses on another wall somewhere else in the second courtyard where they all disperse to, collapses on one of them, then you can't.
Yuma pay daled amud beis, right? Yeah, okay.
So
I studied this Gemara carefully. It's a very complex Gemara. I purposely did not bring it tonight because it's too complex. Yeah, I brought the things which are clearer. This Gemara, when you study it carefully, I have to admit that I don't remember the details. There's a Rashi there which doesn't go too well with the moral hazard story. There's a Tosfos which goes very well with the moral hazard story. It's a complex Gemara. I frankly don't remember the details now, but I can assure you that I've studied this for several months. In fact, I'm learning this sugya with one of my grandchildren, who's in yeshiva, and this whole business. And we've gone through through this Gemara on Yuma Pei Daled Amud Beis. We've gone through it carefully, and we have satisfied ourselves that it jives very well with this thing.
okay, thank you.
Okay. Any more questions? Yes, ma'am.
What is the necessity of all must die? That's a halakhic issue.
What's
Has
that?
nothing to do with your moral hazard. Why do they all have to die?
Well, because they were all offerings, so you can't use them they were all set aside for offerings.
So
okay?
you're not sacrificing them.
And since they were set aside for offerings, you can't eat them, okay?
So you're not
and you can't
sacrificing
milk them. They're hekdesh, yeah? And one got mixed up with them who is not qualified. So what are you going to do with them? Yeah, you can't offer them, and you can't eat them.
You're
so
not
you have to die.
sacrificing
What?
them. You're not sacrificing them. You're just killing them because there's nothing else that can be done with them.
Yeah, or
I didn't
yiru ad
understand.
sheyistavu. Yeah, so you just let them. Graze and.
Okay.
Okay. Any more questions? Yes, Harry. Yeah.
The insurance question might be slightly different, because I cannot insure your house because the insurance company is afraid I will insure it today and I will let it tomorrow. Then I will get paid. You can only insure something which you have got a financial interest in it. Otherwise it doesn't work.
You can't insure my house. Well, that's an interesting point. Okay. Let me think it over for a moment. You cannot insure my house. Probably the reason for that, well, in other words, if I don't insure it, suppose I don't insure it, can you insure it?
Yes.
Can you insure it, yeah?
I cannot insure. I must
Even though I don't insure it,
I have a financial interest if my house burns, and then I get paid. But if it's a profit-making thing, then I insure your house, and then I put fire to it. That's what they are afraid of.
Okay, that's the other side of the same coin. That's right. You also have moral hazard then. But that's even one policy. Oh, thank you very much. Yeah, very good. Yeah. Any other questions? No, that's it. So, ladies and gentlemen, it was a big pleasure for me to give this series of talks, and I'm grateful for an alert and intelligent audience, and have fun.
Very good, thank you. You are very good, thank you.